Henna Maria, thank you for joining us on the Spore Journeys podcast. You are an activist, a community leader. You've been involved in a lot of movements and you've been on this whole transformative journey. And we're very excited to learn a bit more about what that's involved. A lot of our listeners are also on a journey of some kind, feeling maybe a bit stuck in a job or a place that doesn't fit. And someone like you who's gone out there and who's really created a lot of change and a lot of impact in the world has a lot to share. And yeah, I'm just going to invite you to maybe give us a bit of background on yourself and what you're up to at the moment.
Thank you, Milan. And hi, everyone at the Mycelium community. It's so wonderful to be a part of this podcast. And I'm especially grateful that we're connecting now as neighboring nations. The Sweden-Finland connection is very special. I'm grateful about that. So, yeah, background. Well, I've come from the art world, really. That's where I started from. I went to a private art school when I was 16. I moved away from home at a very early age because I was seeking my own path, and this tiny little forest town where I grew up felt very insular and very I felt like I couldn't quite fit into the culture of that. I loved the nature, of course. I grew up in the forest, but culturally, I felt it was missing a lot. So I moved to Tammerfors, when I was 16 and I went to this art school. And always that was my trajectory that I want to follow the arts. I felt that that's truly what is moving me somehow. That this conventional way wasn't actually my original calling ever. But then, being subject to the conditioning of the overriding society, at some point I started telling the story to myself that I need to have some kind of a proper degree to like make it in the world, in the world, nobody makes it as an artist.
Mm,
So then I applied to university at that time to study English translation sciences and psychology. So I went to study simultaneous interpretation in the University of Tampere. And while I was doing my master's degree, I was already hired to work for the Finnish Defense Forces, actually. And I began working part-time for the UN and NATO peacekeeper trainings. And my work was to be the simultaneous interpreter in the trainings. And that was the height of my trajectory as an interpreter, where I could land at some point, maybe to interpret some kind of EU Parliament discussions or a diplomat or whatever. And I already realized then, practicing for this path, this is a dead end morally for me, because I realized that as an interpreter, you don't have a voice of your own. You're basically a human machine, and you
mm,
have to like divorce your own humanity in the moment. You put yourself fully in the service of sharing the communication between two people, but you have no right to intervene, even if they're lying, or
mhm,
even if someone is actively setting a trap for the other one, or if one is misunderstanding. You have to just keep relaying these messages, and you don't have a say to what's being said, although it's being delivered by your own tongue. So I realized that energetically, actually, and morally, I'm being culpable for these messages that are being shared. And I didn't realize then yet that the nature of UN or NATO, that what is actually happening at the like upper echelons of these institutions or behind the scenes. I was still quite green around the ears. This is in my early 20s. I was already a human rights activist then, so it was going well in terms of my kind of humanitarian calling. But I realized that I can't be relaying these messages at some point, and that completely distinguished that path for me. I realized I can't go anywhere with this because I don't want to be saying these things. I want to be the one saying that. I want to be the one who's saying, like, no, 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 this is causing conflict, not peace. I want to somehow get there. Like, I don't want to be the in-between guy. So then I actually dropped out from university, and that was a journey, definitely. I felt like I had the eyes of the society looking like, oh, is she going to be a university dropout? You know, like I had to go through that journey internally. But then I thought, well, I'm going to just go all in with the arts. And I quit university, and that's when I moved to London to continue my theater studies. So then I applied to study theater, and I entered a mentorship program in Covent Garden, and was studying ballet and poetry and all kinds of things that were nourishing my soul. But this is turning out to be a long little intro, but that's eventually
Okay.
what took me to the healing arts. So I actually love this, how I was always called to the arts, but the fundamental art that saved me, I would say, or like brought all these aspects of me together was the healing arts.
Mm,
That's that was my journey there, because when I was in London, then I met my now husband, Richard, who was already on that path. And he was the one who then, and he was in the arts too. He was a music producer and writer. And so he took me to Peru then
hmm
to experience this indigenous medicine, this ceremonial healing art for my own purposes of just healing, traumas that I'd never been able to work on in my life. And that was the opening of the rest of my path, basically. Like everything opened. Not only did I go through a major personal transformation, but also transformation of my entire worldview and the calling. So then I knew, after this first experience of the first month I spent in Peru, I knew that I want to devote my life to this art. That we need this in Finland, we need this in Europe. People are seeking for this.
hmm
And
Yeah.
yeah, that's how I ended up there. But this like a windy, spirally path that took me there. And then, yes, there's many more things to share, but you can shoot me some more
No, that's
questions.
great. I can actually relate to the interpreter part. I haven't worked as an interpreter, but I've worked in translation myself, and so I really get that kind of that you just need to be a transparent channel and you can't add anything. It sounds like there was something about the people that you worked with and maybe some of the content or some of the actual communication that also made you feel like displaced or like this isn't the right kind of thing for me to be doing.
Mm.
And you also answered a question which I was going to ask about how does your artistic expression relate to healing? So you see the healing arts as that's how you're now expressing your creativity. It's to actually, so you actually work with people in the healing process. And so do you
Yes.
want to share a little bit about how that relates to your creative expression?
Yeah, great question. And I would actually also want to just take a couple of steps back to you
Hmm
mentioned being a clear channel. And in this setting that I am in now, it is like being an interpreter for the divine, actually.
hmm
And that for me is the greatest honor, that I can be a channel, because what I am interpreting and what is coming through is something that is truly pure. Whereas when I was working in the simultaneous interpretation, I was channeling forces that were unclean. So in a funny way, I'm
That's
still
really
doing that
interesting.
same job, but in a completely different, context.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the artistic, well, the reason I was called to theater already in my teens was because I felt that our society is full of living dead, that somehow it's stale, it's sterile, it's lacking the expression of the human spirit.
Mm,
I was envisioning that there must be a way to move people, not in a way that it's just a tear-jerking, superficial entertainment, but in a way where they get a glimpse of something within themselves, a glimpse of the greater reality through their hearts, through their, very complex emotional world. which great theater is capable of doing, and music and poetry. Of course, I see this as the channeling of the divine. So that's what called me to that path. And then in the healing arts, we are a channel, like the prayer is to be the instrument for the divine. So we are singing for the soul. We
Mm,
are calling the soul back home. And so, yes, it is highly creative. It's musical because the instrument is song. That's what I specialized in. Apprenticing with the Shipibo, indigenous masters in the jungle. They are the carriers of the healing song. And this particular song, it's called Icaro. And in Finland here, in the ancient times, we used to have people called runonlaulaja, poem singers.
okay.
And they received, so this is Kalevala, you have heard, I'm sure, of the epic mythology of Finns,
Hmm.
which J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings is based on
Oh,
largely.
wow.
So these tales, this oral tradition is actually the oldest oral tradition alive on Earth. And so this is an ancient tradition that was also here in the North, where by communing with nature, by communing in silence, in prayer, one would receive songs. And these songs would be the way that people would transmit the origin stories,
Mm,
the natural law, the morals of life through different archetypes and symbology, but always with melody. And so the Icaros in the Shipibo tradition, they are similar in a way that the songs are received, that they're not created.
mhm,
So your work is not to sit down and write a piece of music or write a song. The work is to purify yourself
mhm,
to such an extent that you are able to start receiving the music of creation into you.
mhm.
So like this
Um,
actually, this moves me because it's such an honor. Like when you first receive a song from a tree, and you get to hear the melody of the sequoia or a spruce, and you get to start carrying that song in your vessel, and this song heals you. It's not your song. You're the vessel which is receiving this song, and then your job is to transmit it to the people that are in the circle
mm,
for the purpose of healing. So this is the devotion, this is the path, as the first one is purifying themselves for years through practice of celibacy,
mm.
through renouncing many things of the modernity and kind of the insatiable consumerist way in order to really purify your senses and your spiritual apparatus so that you're able to hear and tap into and receive these very fine realities of the spirit realm and be able to receive these songs. And then each of these songs, which the curandero receives in the apprenticeship, is unique for you. So nobody else is allowed to touch or carry that song. So the spirit gives it to you because you have been configured in a way that you can carry that melody.
Mm,
These are different from like communal indigenous songs, which are also medicine songs, but the Icaros are unique in a way that they are giving to you and you alone. And then your work is to learn this song when you're in this isolated spiritual communion by yourself in a hut in the rainforest, and you sing day in and day out. And the song gets imbued into your being, into your every cell. And the more you sing, the more the song opens. And then
mm.
you begin to receive the teachings of this song. And you begin to see the portal that the song is, which is opening realms to different realities and calling in higher spiritual beings through the song into this plane of being, who then can, in ceremony, perform different kinds of healings and spiritual operations for people.
Okay,
So
wow, that's
it's a very sacred process, and the
mm,
so the song is everything, and that's what I do for a living now. I sing I sing these songs. Yeah.
that's incredibly profound and very sacred. Yeah, I'm really moved by the the purity of that process and that intention, and I can really see that, it's such a sacred task to prepare yourself to receive that and to put yourself into to become the person that can channel that song. And so, just to clarify my understanding, there is a particular song that you would learn and sing and deepen, or is it a way of singing? And every time you sing, it's slightly
No,
different.
it's particular. It's you will receive a melody, and the task of the curandero is to be 100% faithful to the melody that is given to you. And that melody then acts as this portal and as this path that brings this celestial energy on earth.
Mm.
And if you were to deviate from this melody or start riffing or adding some own bits, it you lose all
Mm.
medicine.
It
Then
loses
it
magic.
then it becomes your own creation, but you're only meant to be a faithful receiver of this melody, and you have to learn this. And sometimes the melody you receive is higher than your capacity to sing. And then you're presented with this challenge as you have to grow as a singer.
Uh-huh.
Like to be able to transmit this melody, you have to grow your scale. And so this happened to me a few times where the song is so complex and so elaborate that I didn't know how to sing it, and I just had to keep tuning into the melody and trying until finally it lands, and then you understand what is in the song. And oftentimes it's shown to you the more you sing it, what it does, and so then you're given the words. But what makes an Icaro is it's alive. So you're given the world of the song, you're shown what it's for. So you receive different songs from different trees. Even from the same tree, you could receive 10 or 20 or 50 songs, depending how long you're communing with this tree. And each song is like a tool in a doctor's toolkit. It does something. The frequency, the melody, the spirit that comes with it is
Hmm.
for a specific purpose. So some are for healing trauma, some are for purifying your unconscious mind, some are to call your inner child. They all have their specific purpose. And then the words are shown to you, but it's alive in a sense that when you sit in front of a pasajero, as we call the passenger, we don't say patient.
Hmm.
We're all sharing the passage of life together. When you sit in front of the passenger, and you're then shown, you're always in guidance, which is the song now to sing for the passenger. You're shown what to sing in the moment.
Mm.
So there are certain elements, the melody must be exactly as it's given to you, but then this is where like the art of the poem singing is happening because you are singing uniquely for your passenger for the things that you know that they're struggling with and the things that are being shown to you in the moment. So
Hmm.
let's say if someone struggles with insomnia, then you begin to sing for the world of the dreams, and it's a very, very complex art. It's yeah, it's a sacred art. It's a mystical art, but it works. And this song is the beautiful thing is that when you are given these songs
Mm.
and you're first learning them, every time you sing the song is healing you. And then when it like the
Mm.
song has done its job on you, then you are able to sing this to others,
Yeah,
and it's resonating.
that's a beautiful principle. You fill your own cup and then the cup runs over and you can actually share and
Yeah.
heal others.
Yes.
Uh,
So it's a long path and there's no shortcuts. There's no way you can harvest a song from a tree. You have to earn their love, their trust in you. And there you can't copy your maestro's songs. You can't listen to Icaros from YouTube and practice them. This is not the way. So this is what I love about this tradition is that
mm.
it's so intimate and it truly is a path of devotion. Yeah. But this is what
It's
we used to have.
embodied. Yeah.
So, sorry, can you say again?
So it's like something embodied. It's not this abstract thing that you can just transmit by viewing information. You actually have to use your
Yes.
body to connect with physical or ethereal um, frequencies.
Yes. And beings. And this is the thing. We used to have this practice here in the north, but it's largely disappeared. There's still some like elements of it left in the north in Lapland, but mostly people don't even know about this. But if you would read the poems of Kalevala, this mythology of Finns, these a lot of these songs and these poems actually came from plants.
Mm,
And when you would go into the art history archives in like the Finnish archaeological museums and things like that, art history museums, and you would read the interviews of the greatest poem singers of our history, they would say this song came from the juniper,
mm,
or this song came from the pine. But there's been this lack of understanding of what it actually means. And that's why I'm so grateful to have been able to be a bridge in this because this is still alive in the Amazon.
hmm
I actually spoke with Sami Ilmari Nuora, who is one of the foremost students of this Kalevala and the Finnish ancient tradition in Finland now. And when we had a dialogue, he then realized that this is how these poems came about, is what you guys are doing in the Amazon. So like something is being pieced together now, that these traditions are coming together. And this is
mm,
what I feel to be one of my greatest missions, actually, why I'm here, is to help build this bridge to the ancient healing arts and to help revive that in Finland now and in the north. Yeah.
mm. That's wow, that's really incredible. Thanks for sharing all of that. It's really profound. I feel like one thing you've touched on is how, when you go into the ancient traditions, and in Europe we've had these beautiful pagan traditions and Celtic traditions that were lost after what happened, through the church and the prosecution of those teachings and those traditions. But when you go back far enough, they tend to kind of connect around those same wisdom practices, right? And I've myself, in being in plant healing ceremonies, I have heard the shamans sing those songs, and there's something unique and otherworldly and completely inexplicable. It's really just incredible. So thank you for sharing more about where that really comes from and what it taps into. So I really get how much of an art that is, and how profound. And I will deepen my own practice of going into the forest and listening to the trees, and listening to the song that they have to share with me.
Yeah.
And that's just something that you need to do over time, right? It's just a practice, and you just go into the forest and you connect. Fortunately, we have that here, that we can go into. I wanted to kind of coming back more into the world as it is now. I really found a couple of points really. One of the things, you mentioned this notion of the living dead, and I wondered if there was some pop cultural reference to that. And that makes me, um, I wonder what that is for you. For me, it's that whole the fascination with zombies. There are all these movies or series about these zombies that are human, but they're kind of soulless. They're kind of just they have this endless hunger. They just want to eat, and they just kind of destroy everything. And so that seems to be a reflection of something that's going on, something that's on people's minds. And so there's this kind of um, expression in the media. And so I wanted to hear your thoughts on specific things that you've noticed around that. And the second question was about, um, what were the fears that you had, or what was the resistance that you needed to overcome when you stepped away from your conventional pathway and you stepped into this um, more authentic expression of you? Was there judgment to overcome, or were there people that were kind of opposing you on that? Or, what were the techniques that you used to kind of break through to this more authentic expression, such as what you've done on your artistic journey?
Mm. Yeah. Many things come to mind to answer. especially the reference to the living dead. Um, I would like to mention that there are this reference in many indigenous cultures too, by the way.
Mm.
Uh, for instance, the Wendigo is an archetypal um, evil living dead human character that is being taught in North American Indian. I think it's the Onondaga tribe, which is a story of a cannibalizing, um, like immortal, dark human being that has it's like the worst judgment or the worst destination of a soul in their culture. This is what they've been sharing, the oral tradition from generation to generation, is when a human being goes against nature or takes more than what is allowed for them to take, then their soul turns into this zombified, insatiable spirit that is always hungry and can never stop feeding. And they tell these horror stories to children to help them stay humble and only take what is permitted for them to take and never take more than what nature can handle to be
Mm.
taken. So I find that very interesting. And of course, then there's the Wetiko, which is another cannibalizing energy and kind of a zombified mind virus. So this exists through eons already, this kind of force in humanity. In modern culture, yes, I absolutely see that the vampire and the zombie are the like symbology to present this energy to communicate that energy. My own experience with it, ever since I was a child, I just felt that there was no joy. Like the society was very joyless.
Mm.
That there was this, yeah, just lack of human expression, lack of warmth, lack of love, really. And how it came in a concrete way for me, how I really truly understood it was actually when I went through a very, very deep trauma when I was 18. Um, let's see, yeah, no, 19 at the time, when my first love took his own life. And
Wow.
so I was 19 at the time, and it just completely threw my world apart. And just the rug was pulled from underneath my feet. And I fell into this grief and total desperation. I became suicidal myself for quite some time. And I then understood that there's no knowledge or no practice in our modern culture to hold someone.
Mm.
There's no experience to how do you cradle someone who's just gone through such a tremendous trauma. There was no knowledge about grief. Anybody that like the way people were handling me and responding to me were just shocking. I truly realized that people don't even know at all what to say, to the extent of just people starting to avoid me because the trauma and the grief and the pain I was carrying was so deep. People didn't know how to respond to that. And of course, this was a time where I was so debilitated. I couldn't go to work. I couldn't do anything. So I had to actually apply for unemployment. And I remember being at this like social security office or whatever, this like very stale building in Tampere, and just sitting there with like a paper in my hand with a number, waiting for my turn to go ask for some money, so I could survive.
Mm.
And looking around all these completely like machine-like humans that were working there.
Mm.
And I had this, it's quite dark, but I want to share it that at this moment, I had this feeling that what if I just climbed to the top of this office? Because it had like an internal courtyard and jumped down. Like, would that awaken these people? That I had such a deep pain inside me, and I thought, these people can't see me. Like, nobody understands what I'm going through, and there's no way for me to receive any help, what I actually need. And so I understand those youths that do that, that jump from malls, that jump from skyscrapers, because it's such a desperate feeling of being completely unseen as a soul.
Yeah.
We're treated as these digits. with a social security number and you queue up and maybe like the only way I was receiving help was to get some money, you know. But what about my soul? What about my bleeding heart? You know, I'm a young widow because I got married when I was 18 and then 19. This tragic death took place. And so that's when I really felt like this society is screwed up, that
Yeah.
there's no space for a human healing here, you know, like how do I actually come out of this? And so finally, what lifted me out of that place of total desperation was through the arts. I joined an improvisational theater group, and
Okay.
there I could play, I could have fun, I could be a child. And that was the most healing environment I could find in our modern society. I
Mm.
did go to therapy sometime. Of course, my family helped me a lot, like so much. They took me under my wing and they fed me and you know, looked after me through the worst part of it. But then when I moved on my own again, and I was having this support for some months from the government because I couldn't work, I went to the improv and I started feeling again like, okay, my inner child is coming back. This is a place where it's safe for me to just like fool around and laugh and play. And that is the single most healing experience, actually, up until I found plant medicine and the ceremonies for the soul. So, yeah, that's where the huge contrast came of understanding that we are lacking so much wisdom and we don't know how to hold these traumas that people carry. And what was the second question? I already forgot.
No, it was more around the judgment or the resistance that you encountered after leaving your
Mm.
interpreter career and
Well, I would have to say that actually it's good that I shared this story. I didn't have that.
mm,
I didn't have that because I had now already at a young age had an experience of death very intimately. And I knew that every day counts. Like my life is such a treasure. And that changed me fundamentally to the point of that I understood that the worst fate for me is to become one of these living dead. And that actually that was what I had fear about is ending up like that. The idea of leaving university, and of course I had to overcome just some of the kind of identity related things. Maybe that was the worst part for me in terms of like leaving
mm,
is the university dropout stamp. But I just thought, you know, screw that. I'm not here for that. I'm here to seek for that something, something greater, something deeper, something more meaningful. And because I had had that trauma, you know, few years earlier
mm,
happened to me, I knew how valuable my existence is, how precious life is.
mm,
I couldn't take it for granted. And so I felt like I have nothing to lose. You know, coming out of that like suicidal place where I myself was, for me, it was just like, well, I'm alive. Like that's amazing. And now I want to do what I want, and I want to do it fully. Like I
yeah,
want to give myself fully to that which my heart is calling me to do. And it was always this finding a way to somehow awaken people to
mm,
their true self and to have a taste of this spiritual element of life, the sacred. Like where is the sacred in
right.
our culture and in people? And how can we revive that?
This really helps me understand the your trajectory that you've gone on because you've experienced this post-traumatic growth, right? You've had this really intense and powerful experience of grief and loss, and it's
Hmm.
really propelled you to kind of go so deep, right? And I mean, you are not afraid to stand up for what you believe in, and you have done that, and we'll talk a little bit about more your work as we go on. But I think this is really great for our listeners and for also myself to understand what has fueled that. So I just think it's great that you're able to um, grow from that and not to turn it into, depression and all the things that come with that, maybe having pills to manage your mood or something
Yeah.
like that. You've actually come through it in a proactive way and embraced. the things that you're passionate about, which is amazing to
Yeah,
very inspiring.
it's become a resource for me.
Yeah.
The wisdom of going through that journey of the trauma and the grief and the healing and then the forgiveness and everything that I had to go through to finally find peace with that. That's become a major resource and it informs everything I do. And of course, especially my healing work. That's the biggest gift that I received when I first went to Peru. And that was, of course, the driver for me to go there is I knew that I still have not healed this trauma of the suicide of my first husband.
Mhm.
And in that ceremony, in the jungle, embraced by these songs of these beautiful healers, I went on this soul journey, and it's so sacred. It's impossible to put it into words, but I was shown the journey of the soul, and like the meaning of grief and the meaning of like I was given this image of a shooting star, and the message was that it's not how long the flower blooms, but how beautifully. And my first love, he was a poet. He was a burning soul, like a shooting star. You know, his life was short. He died when he was 23, but his life still had beauty. And I was shown from like the divine perspective, like how we judge, how we fall into this like crippling desperation when we could just pray and ask ask for the higher understanding. And his whole life isn't hasn't been in vain, even though it ended in such a tragic way. And I don't believe that it is the fate of anybody. He was under oxycodone, which is like a street heroin, when he took his life. So it was drug influenced tragedy that took place. And I'm so grateful that now I'm able to actually help people come out of drugs with the work that we do. Um, but in any case, that these people's lives are still meaningful, and then their deaths are meaningful. And if we honor them, we can learn so much by just honoring life as a response to that. Like, what can I do to better honor my life now that
Mm,
I'm here? Like, there's so much hidden wisdom in even such a trauma if we are willing to receive it. So
mm,
in any case, the ceremony, I went so deep. I went to all these journeys. I was shown some glimpses of the afterlife as well, that our lives don't end here, that this is just a physical vessel, but the soul continues on, and that it is possible to heal even on the other side if some of us fail and we give up, you know, like it's not the end. And it gave me peace. And I thought, you know, going to Peru, and this is a story I'd always been told, that like suicide is such a trauma that you will go to your grave with that there's no way you can ever heal from that. If you lose your loved one, your mother or sibling or you know, your partner to suicide, like it's
yeah.
such a crippling trauma that you can never come out of that. But I did. That one ceremony, it
Mm,
took all of that crippling like terror that I experienced out of me. Like I was washed in divine waters, and it was a miracle. And so I remember just like being in prayer and saying, I give my life to this path. Like if I can prevent one soul from from making that choice of giving up and you know taking their own life, then that like this would be my only prayer if I could do this. And and now I get to do this for a living. That we have so many people who've lost hope, and you know they're like the recluses of society. They're addicts, they're homeless people, and I get to see the life coming back into them. I get to see the joy and the gratitude coming back into them through the power of nature and through the power of prayer. And it's just it's the most beautiful gift and honor and joy to yeah to get to be a part of that. But it was unbelievable. I didn't know that such healing exists. I didn't know it's possible, you know? And so
Mm,
of course then now like I'm armed with this knowledge of I know you can heal anything.
mm,
Anything. We have people coming, who are victims of ritual abuse, you name it, the most hideous crimes of humanity. People have been torn by those things. And yet, even these people can heal. And so, what would I be afraid of? I lost all fear after this. This is why I can stand there. I
mm.
can stand there. I don't care if my name is smeared or if my face is on the cover of a magazine, turned green like they did in the COVID times. I don't care
Yeah.
because this is all nothing compared to like the forces that are on our side. If we stand and if we have the faith and we allow ourselves to step into that grace and into that service of the Most High, then we are given all energy, like all protection, all courage.
Wow.
Yeah, this is
Thank
my
you.
experience.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm truly moved by that. Just how you've turned this tragedy and this loss into this incredible gift, and that you can now take that and go, hey, I can help people who are in that space and help them take, heal and take a better path.
Yeah.
And this really helps me understand yeah, your fierceness, if I can say that, and your grounding and what you stand for. What was his name? Do you mind sharing?
Joshua
Joshua.
Daniel Bailey.
We honor his name. Thank you for
Thank you.
sharing that story. Um, yeah, I want to from here move on a little bit to some of the sovereignty work and some of the
Yeah.
resistance work. And I feel like it connects with that in the sense of how does this, how do you carry this to a wider audience, and some of your work and activism and reaching more people. One of the things I really, when I first heard about you, I think back in Acapulco a few years ago, around one of the conferences there, um, that you've worked with police and you've got this police for freedom. And I just thought it was fascinating, and I always wanted to hear a bit more about that. Um, what led you to create Police for Freedom, and where are you with that currently? Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah. I love this story. God works in mysterious ways because I'm a devout anarchist, I'm a voluntarist, and I had my own prejudices around the whole organization, of course, of police. I still do. I mean, I know a lot of what is wrong there in that organization, but I had never given myself the chance to get to know policemen like as human beings and what is behind the uniform. And I didn't plan to either. They were just like, okay, cops. But then COVID began, and in Spain, this movement arose of Policías por la Libertad, which was Police for Freedom in Spanish. And it was a group of police who wanted to take a stand for freedom in this time of extreme violation of human rights. And they refused to comply with the orders that they were being given in terms of harassing people for the masks and the whatever the stay-at-home orders. And these police, they stood up and said, this is against the Constitution, this is violation of my oath as a police officer. And they actually started organizing demonstrations. So freedom freedom rallies organized by Awake Police in Spain. So of course I had to be there.
That's incredible. Huh?
We were already doing our own street actions every week in the Andalusian coast there. And I thought I have to go there. It was in Valencia. I joined the demonstration and I was doing a live stream from there as as I was marching with them and I was like filming the police and I was like, look at these cops, like they're with us. And like I had this like, like bliss and this like joy and I was like beaming. This video is still probably everywhere. You can find it on like wherever. And actually became friends with these police officers. Sonia Vescovaci is the leader of that. And because I did this live stream, I started getting a lot of people contacting me like, what's this thing in Spain? What are these cops, And so I was speaking to Sonia and I was like, look, there's people who want to interview you. Like they want to know about your movement. And she was like, I don't speak English. And I said, well, does anyone speak English in your group? And she was like, no, nobody does. Like you have to do the interview. And I was like, what? I'm not a police officer. Like, I can't do the interview. They're like, yeah, yeah, you know what we do. Like, you know us, you know our work. You've been to the demonstrations. Like, just give the interviews. I was like, oh, all right. And then I started being invited to speak. I spoke to like a journalist in Japan, and I was like a TV show in Germany, and like all around the world, people started contacting me, and I was like speaking on their behalf, kind of like their spokesperson or whatever. And then I started feeling like we should do an international version of this Policías por la Libertad because it's really working. It was amazing because the police were informing the activists of how to conduct the demonstrations in a way where they won't get police interference because it's an art of its own. Like, how
Hmm.
do you actually do non-violent action strategies? And there are people who have actually like devoted their whole lives into studying this. And these cops were
Hmm.
amazing. So I spoke to Sonia and I was like, what do you think? Like, should we do a police for freedom, like international? And have you guys as the mentors and we open chapters all around the world. And she was like, yes, do it, do it, do it. And then I was like, okay, I'm not a cop, but I'm an activist. And the whole thing about Police for Freedom is like it's the collaboration of activists with police in conscious, peaceful way. And how can we both inform each other and actually be able to facilitate these peaceful, non-violent strategies in order to resist actual tyranny. Because
Mm.
of course the true like men and women of the uniform who have the vow to protect people and catch the bad guys, they're with us.
Mm.
Like they're
Exactly.
with us. So I said, all right, let's do this. And it was in Barcelona in February 2021. We did an event there also. I was there with the Policías por la Libertad and we did a live stream and I announced it like, okay, we're starting International Police for Freedom. Like get in touch with me if you want to start a chapter in your own country and we'll like mentor you like how to do it and you can start doing similar actions as we're doing here in Spain in your country. And I put the shout out and I think next week already I got the first contact from Victoria from Australia. As
Oh,
you know, that was one of the like crazy centers of police brutality in
yeah.
COVID times.
Yeah. It
And
was
we
extreme.
started our first international chapter was actually in Victoria in Australia. And it just went from there. I mean, we had 16 chapters at the height of it all throughout, like in US, Canada, Greece, even in Sweden, we had here in Finland, UK, all around, and different states in Australia. Australia was probably the biggest, actually, funnily. It really like took off there. And then Holland, which
That's
is now
awesome.
super active. And my job was to basically interview all these police officers that wanted to start their own chapter and also screen them and make sure
Mhm.
that they're good guys.
Yeah.
And because my work, with the spirit realm, I'm pretty good at reading people. So I would say that that was a great position I was in, that I was able to feel into like who are these people. So, because of course, when there's a movement rising that has true power, there's straight away forces that want to co-opt that and hijack that and
Hmm. Hmm.
steer it to a wrong direction.
Yeah. Like the
So I was
controlled opposition kind of game. Yeah.
exactly. So I was in a key position there to be able to make sure that we have the good guys. And then we wrote very soon, early on, this moral code, which is something that it was an agreement to act in alignment with natural law. And it was
Hmm.
very like carefully stipulated in a way that if you sign that, then you're one of us.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you wouldn't sign it.
You
And
wouldn't
it
sign.
actually worked. And all our guys, like they're all spiritual. Like all our police officers, they're like steeply spiritual. A lot of them are really like on the path of Christ. and they're fearless. Many of them lost their jobs during this activism. Some of them are still going to court, and they like
Yeah.
they didn't care. Like they knew that this is bigger than them, and they were willing to put all in. And
Mm.
it was so beautiful to work with such policemen. And of course, then I learned a lot about what happens in police when you start actually serving the people instead of the higher ups, you know, which are all
Yeah.
run by secret societies, of course.
Wow.
So I got to see a lot of this, like how does it actually work? And yeah, very, very interesting time of my life. So that was like 2 years. I was really 2021, 2022. I was really deeply in it. And then when the Russia-Ukraine war came and that suddenly COVID was gone overnight, then then kind of the
It just disappeared, didn't it?
somehow the script changed. It's like, okay, no more virus. Now we're in the war games.
Yeah.
And so then Police for Freedom started kind of slowing down a bit because like the urgency of the battle that we were in, which was like they were fighting also for the right to keep working even if you didn't go for the jab. And we had firemen and all kinds of, you know, people from the security field joining us, not just police. It expanded to also like security people and military, you know, soldiers, veterans, all kinds. And yeah, when that battle kind of finished with the jabs, then it's kind of fizzled out a bit. Like there isn't this urgent driver in a
Mm.
way to join forces and put all in. And I think a lot of people were quite battle weary as well, and
Yeah.
people just wanted to have a taste of normality and like return to their families and also reconfigure their lives because so many people then lost their jobs and yeah, had to kind of reorganize everything. But
Yeah.
it's still running there. Like
That's
I'm
good.
more like a consultant or a mentor, but I'm not so involved anymore with the movement.
Okay. Hey,
Yeah, but
thanks for giving some background on that. Uh,
yeah,
So you
it's
wanted
still
to say
happening.
something else? Yeah, it's still going on.
Yeah, yeah. And I think like the way where we are and where it's going is that there probably will be another like surgence of this when the digital IDs and all this like another push is coming to our society and then the like robot police forces and all of this will come like a current issue, then I'm sure that our guys will like be happy to like stand up again and start campaigning. But for now, it's a little bit more dormant.
It's like the mycelium after the mushrooms have come forth, and it's still there, but you can't see it.
Yeah.
But the connections are there, I'm sure.
Yes.
Um, I think it's a lot of our listeners are probably familiar with natural law, so it's really nice to hear that that was a foundation for that work, and that was what you used to redirect, I guess, the focus to protection and, catching the bad guys as opposed to controlling the population in times of crisis, right? Which
Yes.
is kind of what did happen at that time. So that gives me a bit of a background on that. So thanks for sharing that. Just coming back to more of a underlying theme, I guess, and something that a lot of people can perhaps relate to is um, when what are some tools, I guess, to overcoming that tension when you know the right thing to do, but there's this kind of resistance or fear? And is there something that you can share about how to break through that? Because I think a lot of us in our hearts, we do know the right thing to do would be, perhaps to change something in our life or to go to a different place, but we kind of get stuck. And is there something that, um, what is a good starting point? I know plant medicine is a powerful tool, but that's perhaps a
Mhm.
bit of a leap for some people. But what are some steps I can take in that
Mm.
direction to overcoming that? Do you have something to share around that?
Yes. Yeah. I would say my number one compass for that is follow the joy.
Mm.
What gives you joy? This is a question you can meditate on every day, actually. When you wake up first thing in the morning, what would give me joy today? And that will start showing you actually where your natural gifts are in life because you feel a lot of joy when you're doing those things that you're good at or that feed you, that nourish your soul. And then your creative expression, it's a fundamental human element. Actually, the indigenous, they would say that if you're not being creative in some way, then you're not being fully human. Like
Mm,
this is one of our defining aspects of who we are as a being. We are creator beings.
mm,
And so whether it is, creative design that you're doing to design a garden, or it's a kind of an art that you're practicing, painting or writing, or there's so many ways to be creative, but are you allowing yourself that freedom to explore your own creativity?
mm,
What is your art in this life? I think this has a lot of hidden healing power also, and the more you give yourself to your art, the more closer you're coming actually to your true self. And then the closer you're coming to your inner child,
mm,
which is where that invincible, fearless energy actually lives. It's in the inner child.
mhm.
It's not in
Yeah,
the
yeah. The child is just yeah, courageous to kind of play and do it. The child doesn't ask, "Oh, can I, put this thing over here?" They just like play with their things and they just do. Yeah, they're just in the moment, right? Being
Yes,
fearless.
exactly.
And, thanks. That's really, yeah, that's a really practical idea, and I think it also shows why it's so important to um, get away from that kind of repetitive robotic job where we're just like a piece in a machine just doing this repetitive stuff all over again all day long, and why that feels so destructive. So as we say, soul destroying, right?
Yes.
Um, and I think you've touched on it a little bit, but these kind of um, oppressive systems or these like masses of living dead or these kind of end products that are so scary, or like if you want to say control systems or something like that, is kind of like the emergent property of a lot of us being lost and losing our joy and being in this kind of robotic space. And then if we do that en masse, what arises from that? It's something quite scary. But then also the way to address that is that if we can reach so many individuals and we can follow our paths and be connected and be who we're meant to be, right?
Yes.
Which is unique for each one of us,
And
then
that's where the
we can
power,
avoid that, right? We can take away the power from those systems because each person that's unplugged now is no longer feeding that, right? If I'm in the forest connecting with a tree and learning my song and learning that tree's song, um, I'm not feeding that system. I'm not in a mall buying sugary sweets, right? Um,
exactly. That's where the power is exactly that, is being your own true self.
yeah.
Because when you are there, this is something that is emanating from you naturally. So you don't even have to be like out there and like speaking in some events or podcasts or whatever. You don't have to be in the public sphere to influence people, to inspire people. Just the fact that you are true to yourself creates this field
Mm,
and start signaling the people around you like, wow, this is possible. It's like a little kindling that just starts sparking up the other people's inner children, like, hey, I want to do that. I want to be joyous. I want to follow my heart just by being you. Like you don't even have to make the effort. You just like be yourself.
yeah.
And that is so powerful. I would say that is way more powerful than like the numbers in people's social media accounts. Like that isn't the thing,
Mm.
like the people that you're in immediate contact with in your everyday life, wherever you move, your relationships to all life. When you're in that alignment, it's transmission. It's we cannot not feel that when someone is on their path, and it's just an emanation.
And that kind of brings us also to community, I feel, because like that, what is it that we practice when we connect with others and we support each other to be a true expression? You know, um, I see that you're building community in Finland, and do you want to maybe share some of what you do there to support people or to reflect back to people to be on their own path. And, um, I've seen, I don't speak Finnish myself and I haven't dug too deeply, but I see that you've got a site there built up around the community. And I just wanted to hear it from you a little bit. Like, um, what do you do together to kind of strengthen and support people to be on that authentic expression of themselves or that or to express their own creativity?
Mm. Yeah, I think it's a process that starts unfolding naturally when people feel safe. So it's a lot to do with the energetic atmosphere that we create in the tribe. And that is a lot to do with the foundational values, which are the terms and conditions for joining. So yeah, so for those of you who don't know about it yet, it's called Kotiinpaluheimo. It means homecoming tribe. And we are a private membership association. And I actually just checked today. It's a special day because we have just become 1,000 members today.
Wow, congratulations. That's
Yeah,
huge.
thank you.
That's
Yeah, it's like
amazing.
a milestone, definitely. And yeah, we started in July 2023, so almost coming up to 2 years. We launched the site. We came together in February that year, me and three friends of mine, to establish this PMA and to really lay down the like the ground rules and the vision and the goals, the kind of infrastructure, how we're going to build it. But the most important piece, I believe, is the foundational values because it it creates this culture for our tribe. Like, how do we communicate with each other? What kind of principles do we all cherish? And what kind of energy we want to foster there? And for us, it was very important that it's not for everyone. It's for those who want to live in a peaceful way.
Mm,
We don't accept this kind of like debate mentality, or there's no cursing, there's no attacking anyone verbally, not on our online forum, which is the membership site, or in our physical meetings. Like we don't live in such an unconscious way that we want to build a more conscious, intentional culture, actually. And we want to revive that the sacred way of being in community, which is that we honor and we respect each other in everything that we do. And so we've laid down these nine values, and which each value there is a declaration of how do you manifest that value in the community and as yourself as a member. It's in like practical steps. What does it actually mean? It's not just a concept, it's an actual practice and a guiding light. How do I behave in this community? Because there is such a thing as, are you suitable for community or not? Not everybody is. Not everyone's
yeah.
gone through enough, emotional healing yet to be able to be in community because their needs are elsewhere and they have blockages and different kinds of distortions still that are influencing their behavior. So it's a lot to do with creating emotional safety,
Mm,
which can be felt physically, viscerally, and then when your nervous system can relax, yeah, when you feel somatically that you are in a safe space, then the creation starts coming out naturally. You
mm.
don't even need any kind of, facilitation for that. It's just for people to
Yeah.
feel safe.
So you create a space that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
We've worked with agreements here as well, and it's kind of and it's really interesting to hear you talk about these nine values, um, and that you have the discernment to say, hey, this isn't for everyone, because this is the I've looked at a lot of intentional communities and people putting together communities, and there tends to be this kind of um, haphazardness or randomness, or anyone who shows up is like, oh yeah, yeah, we're just all here and we'll just start with this. And so I think it's really interesting that you've got this kind of filter to say, we only want people who are really ready for this and who are really committed to these agreements. I think that's a really, really useful approach that you have there. And it also shows a groundedness and a kind of, practicality to say, we're not desperate to sign up everyone. And no, it's about creating the right space and creating
Yes.
a safe space. That makes a lot of sense to me. Is there, I'm just curious how do you kind of do the initiation process, if you want, or like how do you is there a kind of reading of the nine values where you go through with new people together, or how do you kind of share that or discuss that with people?
Yeah. So actually, the way we've structured everything is that when someone wants to become a member, they go on this online membership site that we have,
Hmm.
which is a private online community, and you purchase your membership there. And there, upon the form that you're filling to become a member, there you have the terms and conditions that you have to tick. And the terms and conditions is this value foundation. So it's in written form there, and you tick that I have read and I agree that you're committing to
Mm,
those values. And part of these rules is also that if you continuously are going against these values, then you will be kicked out. Your membership will be terminated.
mm,
So it has an actual like practical boundary as well for people.
mm,
Because I witnessed that a lot where spaces are destroyed by like one or two individuals who come there with a bad intent or they have some kind of maybe a trauma response psychological disorder or something going on, and they start just filling the community with all kinds of conflicts and arguments and lies and distortions, and nothing is done about it because in the freedom community people say, ah, there's freedom of speech.
yeah.
But in our community, this is not the case. It's like we say you have freedom of speech, freedom of speech under the circumstances of being respectable,
Hmm.
but you don't have the freedom to abuse people. This is not freedom. This is violence.
Hmm.
You absolutely do not have the right to stop name calling and cursing and
Yeah.
spreading bad energy and destroying the lovely atmosphere of trust and safety that we've created where we honor each other. And if you don't have the spiritual maturity yet to behave that way, then this community is not for you and you're kicked out.
Mm,
You know, like you have to also be able to protect what you're creating because like, yeah, we are creator beings, but we also have the potential to destroy. And
yeah.
communities get destroyed from the inside, like 99% of the time, because people don't sort out the bad apples and say, wait a minute, this individual is totally not suitable.
I was actually about to comment on that, and I'm really happy that you have that shared understanding of these nine values so that you can deal with bad actors. Because something that I've seen a lot, and I'm sure you have too, is well-intentioned groups or community activist groups or anything from going to protesting against genetically modified organisms and food or community gardens. And you have these bad actors coming, and it's just way too easy for one bad actor to completely distort and even make a project fail because we don't have the ability to um, remove those and to call them out, right? And to say, hey, this is not on. If you can't be peaceful, then be somewhere else, kind of thing.
Yeah,
So I'm
I
glad
have
that
to
you
say,
yeah.
I used my moral code from Police of Freedom as the foundation for bringing it here because I saw how it worked there. Like
Hmm.
we had, for instance, we had one guy coming from like the secret police of Hong Kong who wanted to start he wanted to start his own chapter. But the first thing he said, and he was this like you know, decades of experience, very high up. Like if you look at his ranking in the organization, he would be one of those that a lot of people would be afraid of. Like, okay, this is a big shot guy. But me, as this activist, I was like, "Pfft, I don't care who you are. You know, like
Yeah.
where are you morally? Like who are you as a soul? So because he was like appealing to merit, he was trying to have me change the moral code. That was his first
Mm.
thing upon the interview. He said, you got to remove this bit about the natural law, like that there's no actual like physical, like what is natural law? Like nobody knows, like you got to take it out.
Hmm.
And I was like, you're out. You know, like no, we're not touching that. So if you have a really good like terms and conditions that you've written for your project, this is a protection. And you can
Yeah.
always appeal to that. And this will set a natural screening process where people who are not in agreement with these sacred principles, they will not come. Or
Hmm.
you can hold them accountable if they start getting out of alignment, because
Yeah.
we've had a few cases, I can count with my one hand of cases where somebody came with a bad intent. There was one individual who started laying out these traps for people and then like taking pictures of their online communications that were private and then sharing them outside the private
Mhm.
community to try to smear people and try to create like this kind of blackmailing and weird, very dark stuff.
Yeah.
And because we have this terms and conditions, and we can immediately just terminate the membership and say this is not agreeing to any of the things that we've outlined here. So this is why like there doesn't need to be any kind of hierarchy because the values are king.
Yes.
We all agree to these values. They are the ruler, not any single individual. And if we can all agree on that, then we're all equal amongst each other.
Hmm. Yeah, that's cool. And so that's answers this kind of difficult question that a lot of people have, or that maybe a lot of people struggle with, particularly in the freedom movement, is saying, how can you be an anarchist but also have rules and enforce rules, right? But it's referring to a set of shared values. And then the positive policing is to say, well, you're not in agreement with our shared rules and you can't be with us until you are able to be in agreement. And same as you, we've had that here as well in our little community here in Sweden that, you know, people will show up and immediately on day one they'll try to start to change things, and that's immediately a red flag to say this isn't going to work because um, there's this sense of come and understand how things work, and then maybe you've got some ideas and we can talk about it. But if you show up immediately wanting to change something, then that's going to be a problem, and it's probably not going to work out. Um,
Yeah, and there's difference in voluntary participation and complete chaos. Like just the fact that something is a decentralized anarchist or voluntarist community doesn't mean that there couldn't be shared agreements. Just like if it's your house, you're not gonna let people just come in and start like throwing their dirty clothes around and not clean up their mess. It's like we have certain rules here. Like you take off your shoes, here's where you put your coat. This is our space that we're creating together. And it's the
yeah.
same for communities, they're working environments, just like in any workspace. There's a certain protocol you do things. There's time limits, there's accountability. Like this is it's a really a flawed perspective to think that in a freedom community, you couldn't have shared rules.
Hmm.
There's difference between domination and accountability and taking responsibility.
Hmm. That's great. That's a really good distinction. Yeah. Just asking about, you've taking a step back into the movements across different countries that you've built. You span your movements have, or your projects, I should say, have spanned different countries and cultures. Um, what have you learned about weaving lasting and deep relationships over distance?
Over distance, I would say that if you have that heart connection, if you show up authentically yourself and you have very like clear communication about the project or the collaboration, it it can take on a life of its own without necessarily needing like constant feeding. So, like for instance, what I noticed with Police for Freedom is that if your initial contact with the chapter leader, for instance, is really authentic and you go deep into the expectations or the aims or the goals and you very clearly communicate everything, you can establish this connection like on a heart level, and there's trust between the two of
Mm.
you. And then the project can take a life of its own, and you can hand it over to people.
Mm.
But I think this kind of trying to micromanage everything and trying to control things, it kind of distinguishes the spark of inspiration from people. And
Mm.
it's very laborsome, it's very cumbersome to try to somehow constantly be involved in everything, even if it's happening, you know, on a local or international level, it doesn't really matter. But especially on the international collaborations, I think it's so important to nurture this trust, and that can be created by very clear communication and authenticity. And then when you come together, it can be so efficient to then also share like what's not working, what's like how things could be improved, because from the get-go, there's been this really like straight up, very authentic communication.
Yeah. So then you have a good foundation in place. So I can see this as a recurring theme for your work, whether it's whether it's the values or connection to source and the creative healing art. So you're always going on a foundation that can then sustain time and distance, essentially.
Totally. Beautifully put.
So thank you. So Hannah, our can I call you Hannah or is it Hannah?
Yeah, you can call me Henna. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Our listeners are mostly builders of spaces and systems, and our platform, Mycelium Hub, is rooted in those same values that you've spoken of. We're building spaces online and in person to reweave trust and deepen the relational bonds. And as we share this story with our audience, we hope to inspire collaboration, education, and action. We'd love to hear what advice you'd give to those trying to create intentional and resilient communities in this time.
Mm. I would go back to that foundational values and terms and conditions. That's the most important piece, is that you really think of the energetic foundation of what kind of culture you're wanting to create for your project. What kind of rules for the communication, like do you have uh, some kind of process in place for conflict resolution already? Like, don't go into something without having thought about these things, because it's always the human element which both brings the magic but also the tragic.
There will be conflict. There will be.
Yes. So and I love it because in our community we practice sociocracy, like we adapt it to our needs, of course.
Mhm.
And with sociocracy, always the dissenting or disagreeing voice is seen as an opportunity, and it's really valued. So when someone disagrees, when it's a decision-making process and someone says, I don't agree with this way, then it's always honored as a wow, okay, well, now we're about to receive a gift because this individual is going to share something that we yet not did not see
Mm.
or did not understand, or our picture isn't clearly complete because they're having a dissenting view. So of course it also requires that the people have to be able to explain and argue for why they see things differently. You can't just say, no, I disagree. Like in
Mhm.
sociocracy, you always have to, you give the backup, like why I'm disagreeing. So
Yeah.
in a social setting, when there's conflict, normally that is also an opportunity for deeper trust and intimacy to be built. And how, like, what is your capacity to respond to people's conflicts will largely determine the future of your project. Like, can it sustain the test of time? Like, can you move forward? Because that is the most resource heavy thing, I would say, from anything, from budget, from strategy, is actually the human relations part of it. Like,
Mhm.
how are you able to hold and maintain peace and collaboration and genuine trust in your project between
Mhm.
all the different parts? And so something that has evolved along like our journey with the tribe, the Kotipaluheimo, is actually that we realized that as important as our kind of masculine operative structure of the PMA, which has to be there, by the way. Like you have to have, if you really want to build something sustainable, you have to also have some kind of money to put into it.
Hmm.
And that's why we have membership fee, which is 11 euros a month. It's really accessible for everyone. And then with this membership funding, we are able to hire expert services. So we have the operative structure in place. We have people who are running our tech and building the online communities, and we have people who write the newsletters, and we have different kinds of working roles in
Hmm.
the operative structure. And I would say, and,
Yeah.
and we like in the tribe, we recognize that this is more the masculine infrastructure that we need for our tribe. But we also need the spiritual feminine structure. And that we have to value as much. So how much resources are we able to put into the kind of yeah, feminine infrastructure? So we have now each of our regions are represented by like the operative representative, but also the we call it the internal atmosphere um, role, or how would you translate it? So
Mhm.
we have six regions of our country, and we have so two representative. One is for the operational side, and one is for the side of the human relations and the connections between people. So how do we make sure that we have people who are able to take on the conflicts or the challenges that are happening on a local level or in a working group, or if there's some kind of challenge happening in an event, organization team, or whatever, there's always going to be arising some kind of challenges on the social realm. And
Yeah.
so, do we have the resources to support these people? What if someone has a crisis? I told you about my own personal trauma and experience of feeling completely that there was no structure that could support me. In addition to my family, of course, which was life-saving, but societally, there was nothing. Then can we, as a project, as a community, build structures and resources for this kind of events? Do we have some kind of crisis help available? Do we know where we can steer people, even if we don't have ourselves yet, like a safe home? Let's say if there's some kind of tragic death in a family or an illness or something. If we don't have that ourselves, do we know in each area of our country services that we can, recommend to people? Do we have like a crisis kit that we can give forward? And
Mm.
what about how does the peace mediation happen between two people who are in conflict? How does that process take place? Who do people contact to want to do that? How is it facilitated? And all of this is also requiring resources. So if we want
Of course.
people whose job is to take on other people's conflicts and help sort them out, they probably would like to have some kind of compensation for that. Because what I've seen, if it's all volunteer run, and it people exhaust themselves. There
Mm.
has to be some
Yes.
kind of energy exchange, some kind of compensation, some token of value that we are giving forth to say, we value your efforts, we value your contribution. And so I don't believe in this kind of everything's for free mentality. I think this really a huge trap. And
Yeah.
I see many movements become destroyed because people think this way, that nothing should cost anything, and somehow yet the whole thing should be run by people who don't get any compensation for their work. So other people have to sacrifice basically like their days and their energy and their life for this
Yeah.
project so I can get this product or service for free. So I think this
Yeah.
is a huge trap, and we should vocalize it and say that this is not the way forward.
Thank you so much for saying that. I've encountered this mindset myself as well, and I think it's a kind of a taker mentality.
Yes.
It's not honoring the work that people do in the background, and as we say with the mycelium, it's always there, it's always working, it's always making connections, and there's we should be feeding and honoring that. And you've also addressed a question I was going to ask about how does it all work economically? So that gives us some insight. And I think it's so inspiring to see that work that you're doing there. Um, I think, in times of crisis and in times of disruption, it's so important to have this kind of community, this kind of network that can provide solutions that can support people, that can support people to transition. We're now seeing, we're going to have a lot of people becoming unemployed through automation, through artificial intelligence. And so I feel like this work that you're doing is exactly what's needed, not just the human connection, not just not just the community in itself, but actually being able to support people through trauma, allowing people to reorient and then find human connection and connect with nature and connect with themselves and divine source ultimately. And that's really what's needed. Do you want to share a little bit about I feel like you're connected to so many relevant and, explosive topics in our world of like what's happening in the control system and, the work with the police and the work with the community. What's your vision overall? What do you see emerging from this? Are you hopeful or how do you see the next few years and what do you see emerging from this work that you're doing?
Hmm. Yeah, it's something I answer with a lot of caution because I know that reality is an aggregate creation. So it means that actually each and every one of us are an active part of the creation of our future. And so even if people were not aware that they have this creative force within them, that they are creator beings, they can create from that place of unconsciousness. So whether you're conscious or not, you are creating and you're chipping in, and all of us together, every human being is contributing to the creation of the collective whole of this shared reality. So
Yeah.
right now, as like what I'm observing and what I'm perceiving is that there is going to be a transition into a whole other kind of society taking place. I see it as a juggernaut that cannot be stopped anymore, which is why I myself personally have taken myself out of that, like being on the streets with the signs and saying no. Not that that was only ever like the whole thing that I was doing. I was always also, you know, trying to inspire dialogue and the whole idea of then what, like if we say no to this, then what do we say yes to? If we don't want this future, then what do we create? And I was always there like trying to initiate this kind of dialogue and community activation. But I see now that that is coming with such like speed that I myself have decided to allocate fully all of my creative potential into the creation. So no longer so much in the battlefield at this point, at least. More just like kind of, in a way, like turning my eyes away from that because I know already. I know what they're doing. I know their game. I've read, their documents of the lockstep and the Agenda 2030, and I'm aware of the future that they are wanting to manifest also through wanting us to believe that this is the sole reality, so that's a part of it too. But however, I am seeing what is happening in the infrastructure of our societies and how the services are changing and how everything's going online and the digitalization and the like, this is definitely happening as we speak. And so for me, I see kind of a fragmentation of when there's a pool of water and then there's a force that forces the water out of the pool, and the water has to find new ways, and there's multiple different streams that are coming out of this, like when there's a flood. I feel like this is the time of the great flood energetically, where people are pushed because of this force that is pushing out of their jobs. You mentioned about people losing their work because of the automation, like everything becoming automized in our societies. So like where are these streams going? I I bow in front of the great mystery. I cannot say myself that I have a full picture of what is going to happen. But I know that with our tribe, now the 1,000 members that we can carve one of these streams of water and we can consciously start to create the bends for it so that it will go to a healthy place. that we are able to somehow keep the human spirit alive in the middle of this transhumanist, technocratic transformation, what is happening in our societies and in our culture. So I am seeing the emergence of all of these beautiful hubs, like what you guys are doing there in Sweden, of natural living. And how do we revive the original way, the original human being? How do we revive the sacred? And so there are these little twinkles that are starting to form. Definitely, this is also unstoppable and it is inevitable. But how much of the kind of yeah, the folk, like the everyday folk and the like the masses, so to say, we are able to invite to this side of the bridge? I don't know that, but my hope, I can hope that the lives we lead and the like the healing that is then evident in the energy that we carry in the way that we walk this earth will be an inspiration for many people to want to come and taste that way of life. So
Hmm.
if you think of the contrast of the smart grid and these so-called smart cities where people are monitored with drones, with the Internet of Bodies and Internet of Things and these like insane dystopian realities. And then you think of a place like where you are right now, I can see a little bit of the background, like this lush green, organic intelligence, God's creation, and how people are living there with their children, freely roaming and creating these beautiful, like new pathways for humanity. I think eventually, like in the long run, that is going to be the more attractive choice.
Mm.
It's just how many generations it's going to take. How much destruction is going to have to happen? How many resources are we going to have to lose on Earth before that transition finally takes place? I don't know, but I do believe that at some point that tower of Babel that is being erected now is destined to collapse
Mm.
because it is based on insatiability. So it is this cannibalizing force, this wetigo, this windigo, this insatiable spirit that it's requiring so much resources to keep it alive that it will have to end up consuming itself. It's not sustainable. And in like God's time, in earth time, this is but a little glimpse. Like it cannot sustain. If we think of the forces that are present here, the living forces, that this is nothing in the end of it, you know?
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
That's really, you took the words out of my mouth there, actually, at a few places, in terms of where I feel like we're really aligned in the sense of let's create spaces where people can be, where they can they can feel it in their bodies, they can feel it in their hearts, that this is a different way to live, and they can really, it's not just about reading something or watching a YouTube, even though we're using these channels for storytelling, and it is important to tell
Yeah.
an alternative story about what's possible, and not just the scary stories of, being monitored in every way, in every space, at every moment by robots or things like that, that we can share the story of what would it be like if we could live like this. And that's why I love that you're also doing that with the community in Finland. As we are here, we need to have a lot of hubs. We need to have a lot of expressions of this. Um, this is what we're doing. We're going to present to some people in Swedish agencies and see what the response is. I love the idea of a PMA. It's an alternative economic structure, right? So I think some people don't know what that is, but maybe we'll put a link to something in the show notes. And creating community, which we'll be doing online. We'll have our own private membership there, and we'll be helping people on that path and balancing that with people coming in person and enjoying community in person. And you're doing all of these elements in different ways as well. So I really thank you for this incredible journey that you've taken us on. It's been quite emotional and moving in a lot of places. In closing, I wanted to also ask, what are some of the places where you're sharing online where people may want to um, see, follow your work or maybe support your work, do you want to talk about some of the websites or channels? And we'll put some of those links in the notes as well.
Thank you, Milan. Yes, so I'm back now on the commercial platforms. I left 2022. I left Facebook and Instagram and just said I'm done. But I found that actually there is a way to navigate, being on those platforms and kind of springboard some beauty into the world. So I've returned. So you can find me on Facebook and Instagram if you just look for Henna Maria. And I've got a Telegram channel. And of course, like the center is my website, hennamaria.community. And
Hmm.
there you can find the links to everything. So we also have a healing sanctuary here in Finland, which is in the making. We're turning it into a community space also, space for different kinds of gatherings. My vision really is to hold events where we can gather wisdom keepers, teachers of natural law, medicine people from different cultures to really weave these connections and build these bridges so that this ancient sacred way can really be revived and in each of our cultures. So I will be sharing more about that in the coming months and years as this is in the making. But yeah, Wisdom Origins is the sanctuary.
Western origins.
Yeah, so we do retreats and we also do travel sometimes and come to different places and even give private retreats for people. So that's really like the sole focus of my work is the ceremonial healing arts with plant medicine. And then my alongside that is of course the community work, but they both support each other.
Hmm.
But yeah, hennamaria.community, that is where you'll find everything, all the links.
That's great. Well, look, Marcia and myself look forward to receiving you here with your partner, and
Thank you.
we can do another episode when you're with us. But this has been truly amazing. So thanks for sharing yourself, sharing your time, and sharing your wisdom with us. Really
Thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much for having me. All the best and blessings to your project, and I really can't wait to visit.
Thank you so much. We look forward to it.